Well, would you look at the 10-year-old anime being topical as all hell? We open with our protagonist having nearly escaped from Gardos and his droid thanks to Tachibana and Bomber. Of course, Sugi was a little worried about them as they were messengers of God who were going against his will. Though, to be fair, it wouldn't be the first time for the big guy. Still, they had their own concerns as Yaiba was already kind of knocking on heaven's door without his big sword in hand. Kind of looks more like a brother and sister to me, but you do you, anime. Likewise, Bringer, yet again, had been heavily damaged, and Samohang was unsure if they could fix him after so many repairs. However, wanting to make up for being brainwashed for several episodes, Sora promised to repair him. Well, for starters, you should probably see if you can switch his OS from a Mac to PC. But yeah, as a result, the Sword Eyes would end up spending the episode trying to recover and figure out their next course of action. To do so, the Purple Brothers decided to show them what was going on in the world. Of course you know more about that than anyone, right, Alphonse? They ended up showing them the situation with the citizens and the Arcs, with the Stingers having enforced martial law. This also led to some of the upper crust being left behind, who of course were more than willing to sell off their pride and beliefs as long as they could both survive, and also line their pockets a little more by submitting to Gardos. Well, if you say so.
This is CNN.
But yeah, I really did like the scene, as it subtly revealed Gardos' deeper motivations for all of this. He has, kind of rightfully, become disillusioned by humanity, not just because they screwed over his brother, but as time has gone by, he has seen many instances of pure selfishness. He not only saw them like the god who created the battle spirits and regretted giving them wisdom, he also became much like the Old Testament god who cursed Adam and Eve for partaking in the fruits of knowledge. We bring this all up because it is also meant to contrast with our heroes of this episode. In their case, after running into Mrs. Chun, who at least wasn't quite as greedy as her husband, they met some kids who ended up getting separated from their mother, who was on one of the arcs. Yeah, let's not get into that touchy subject matter. And they weren't the only ones, but against a whole army of robots, there just wasn't much they could do. About the only thing they could do was play their children's card game, so that's exactly what they did, with Hagakure and Kizakura having more of a casual battle. Yeah, okay, so no getting around it. This was meant to be an ad for the product they were trying to sell, but in terms of the setting, it did make sense. They wanted to boost the morality of these kids, who just so happened to be the target audience of this game. I mean, it was wholesome enough, with even the Purple Brothers getting involved by helping broadcast the game for them. Of course, the game was pretty much like a best hits for both Sword Eyes of Light, with Kizakura thankfully playing optimally because I really like her deck style. However, and while she managed to pull off her main Sword Brave combo and bounced a bunch of Hagakure spirits back to his deck top, the Green Shinobi still managed to win, mostly thanks to his spirits having shadow clone effects that allowed him to swarm and defeat her. Still, who won was kind of irrelevant, as Ruki had come to the realization in regards to the aforementioned punishment God had bestowed upon the battle spirits. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of spirits that don't really care for kids, so this actually might be like an eternal hell for them, but you do you. I kind of kid, of course, as this was legit wholesome, and it did promote the main purpose of any good TCG, bringing people together in friendly competition, even in stressful situations like this. Sure, it doesn't always work out this nicely, but that more happens during tournaments when your so-called friends steal your cards, damn it. But yeah, as one of the final episodes to this little series, it was a good little aside just to remind us what this is all about. Episode 47 immediately followed after the events of the previous one, with the Sword Eyes continuing to entertain the kids, including partaking in their version of Tanabata, because somehow this fantasy world in another dimension had a tradition similar to a holiday celebrated mostly in just Asian cultures in our world.
That makes sense to me.
Weirdest thing is that this episode didn't even air around Tanabata in Japan. Child, you know not what you wish for. Of course, this brought up the question about what Tsurugi would wish for, which of course they would save for the end of the episode to build up the anticipation for the very obvious answer. Anyway, Sora had finished up the repairs on Bringer, who of course didn't wake up at first until Tsurugi's cries woke up his main power source that was actually shaped like a damn heart. Hey, I asked for less cheese in this sandwich. Well, he at least woke up at just the right time, as after being bedridden for almost the entirety of the last episode, Yaiba had woken up and was determined to yet again try to resolve everything on his own against Gardos. Thus the two gave chase, with some upgrades that Sora managed to work in. Meanwhile, the messengers who had appeared in the previous episode had essentially been evicted from their little home in the sky, as I guess God was indeed their landlord. However, Galaxy Watanabe hadn't been kicked out, as he hadn't done much of anything in the show, including opposing the Lord Almighty, so he could have remained neutral, as his friends were about to be crushed by a big moon. Hell, they even encouraged him to just do what he wanted, and yeah, you can guess what happened. Also, yeah, these guys had some signature favorite foods, with one of them having a similar addiction as another character from a Sunrise production.
何も
Back with Yaiba, Tsurugi had caught up with his brother, who he rightfully chewed out for going full Hero Yui and trying to fight Gardos again when he was clearly not in any way in good shape. Thus, of course, they decided to settle these matters, as well as their ongoing rivalry, with one more final battle for the season. The battle played out typically enough, with Tsurugi starting with his dark spirits, including the Dark Tyrannosaurus, as his first major summon. As a result, he was able to take out Yaiba's first key spirit, the Dark Ninetail, but then that was countered with the Nika Ninetail that was summoned through its effect. He then switched over to his light spirits, including of course his first key spirit, the OG Shining Dragon, which he then later comboed with the Arc variation to destroy the Nika. Yeah, if you couldn't tell, this battle was also meant to be like a bit of a best hits album to really highlight how far both of these players have come, though of course mostly Tsurugi, as in order to really defeat his brother, he does have to defeat all of his key spirits, which by my count, I think there's just one more. In the final turns of the game, both brothers managed to get out their final key spirits, though Tsurugi also resummoned the OG Shining Dragon, both for some symbolism that we'll get to in just a bit, and its effect that let him summon the Dark Blade and let Overray double brave with it. He also played a Nexus called the Sacred Sword Mountain Range, which had the effect that it could negate other effects during the attack step as long as he discarded a card. Of course, this meant the Darkness Griffin couldn't use its core removal effect on Overray, leading to one of the most awesome final clashes between the spirits, where both Tsurugi and his dragon managed to come out on top.
俺刃がいたからここまで強くなれたんだ
With that, the last attack of the game went to the OG Shining Dragon to really highlight how far Tsurugi had come, with even his original spirit playing a key part in this victory. Though before the final blow was delivered, the brothers had a really damn wholesome exchange where Yaiba acknowledged his brother's dream, which turned out to be...
俺の夢はスケボーチャンプになることだ
Okay, I didn't quite see that coming, but it does at least make sense. I think it's meant to show that he knows he's not cut out to be a leader for much beyond their current conflict, and does want to make a world where everyone can pursue their more personal dreams, including himself, so yeah, good on him for knowing when to punch out for this whole shonen protagonist thing. And with that, the episode ended with Yaiba graciously accepting defeat and entrusting Tsurugi with his sword brave. These are some good cooldown episodes that also wrapped up the main rivalry of this shonen anime. While admittedly a little fillery, the casual battle between Hagakure and Kizakura felt like a necessary reminder about what the show is all about, and seeing the rivalry between the brothers and before the actual final battle was a good call. It both puts Tsurugi in the position where he's clearly the one destined to defeat Gardos, and also wraps things up very nicely with his brother. While many shonen anime tend to end with the final rival battle, I don't think that should be an absolute rule. Sure, it should be always saved near the end to give a good sense of finality to a long-running storyline, but depending on the story, the actual final boss should probably wrap things up. In this case, Gardos does feel like a proper final challenge, both because he's already beaten Yaiba, and his beliefs are in direct contrast with our protagonist. He has a much more pessimistic worldview, which, to be fair, isn't unjustified, but even in the face of the apocalypse, the Sword Eyes actually try to cheer up some kids who got separated from their parents at the border, with the card game they're advertising. Yeah, Hagakure and Kizakura's battle was just kind of there, but it did serve a narrative purpose in showing the optimism of the protagonist that they wanted to share with everyone. Now, for an actual exciting battle, that of course came from Yaiba and Tsurugi. As the final battle between the brothers, they basically tried to cover every base they could, with the Eyes of Red defeating each of his brother's key spirits in sequence before circling back to defeating him with his original dragon. It is a very satisfying battle, both for the excitement, but kind of even the wholesomeness of seeing a happy Yaiba knowing that his brother had indeed surpassed him. Good stuff that effectively wrapped up one of the longest running plot lines, before concluding narratively the most important one in stopping Gardos. And overall, these are just good penultimate episodes before we enter into the final battle for the series. Sometimes, we do kind of need to be reminded that the show is based on a card game that everyone should be able to enjoy, as long as things don't get overly toxic with some OP archetypes or the like. Thank you for watching, and maybe you could watch some of our other videos on this channel, if you have the time. Granted, I know when this video comes out, everyone in my country will probably be focused on something else, but hey, if you need a stress reliever, maybe you could use some of my ramblings as some good little brain rot. Still, until next time though, for now my friends, and if you'll excuse me, I just gotta go lock my doors. Whoever wins this one, it's gonna be a headache.